Hi everyone, this is Chandan Kumar, Apprentice Junior Engineer in Integral Coach Factory, Chennai. In this video, I'm going to brief about casting process during manufacturing of the train wheels. So let's get into the video. The first process begins with selection of scrap. They may be rejected wheels, rejected axles, used axles and worn out wheels. Road chips form during machining processes. The scraps are divided into three types: light metals like machine chips, medium scraps and heavy metals. This sectioning is important because during the initial melting process in the electric arc furnace, the distribution of heat is not uniform. The bucket charging distribution is such that, from bottom to top, heavy, medium and light scrap. This arrangement will prevent major fire spewing, scrap bridging, and scrap collapse when the arc is set up. Second process is charging of scrap. It can be simply defined as addition of scrap along with materials such as limestone, calcined lime and coke/graphite to the furnace. Brief procedure. The electrodes are raised and an electromagnet via an EOT, electrically operated trolley, electric overhead traveling crane transfers machine chips and some light scraps into the furnace. 3. Bucket charging of scraps in the required order is done. The bucket opens from the bottom. The heavier metals are on the bottom, then followed by medium and light scrap like machine chips. True charge approximately 900 to 1200 kgs calcined lime and 200 to 250 kgs coke/graphite. Third process is melting of scrap. Brief procedure. The electrodes are lowered. On supplying the necessary current and voltage, an arc is struck between the electrodes and the charge for 45 to 55 minutes. The gap between the electrodes and the charge is maintained by regulating the movements of the electrodes so that the arc remains between them. After 45 to 55 minutes, oxygen lancing pipe is used for cutting of scrap through the slag door. The temperature during this procedure is 1650 to 1700 degrees Celsius. John Moore Pit, JMP. After the melt is poured into the ladle, it is carried to the JMP. The wheel shop has two John Moore pits. The main purpose of JMP is for temperature measurement and maintenance, and finalizing the melt composition. The ceramic pouring tube is fixed on a cover, and it takes around 1 day for preparation because it has to withstand high temperatures of the melt. This is done in a pouring tube section. The roof is lifted and lowered 2 to 3 times for the pouring tube to get accustomed to the heat. This process prevents cracking of the pouring tube. Casting process. The casting process uses controlled pressure pouring process through which the melt rises in the ceramic pipe and fills the cavity of the approximate desired shape. This technique contains cope and drag system. They are made up of graphite material. The cope and drag assembly is placed on the covering of the ladle, which contains a center circular hole. This hole houses the ingate through which molten metal gets into the cope drag assembly. The liquid metal with high air pressure comes out of the ladle through the ingate. A sensor prevents overflow of melt, i.e., graphite stopper plunges the bottom of the drag and prevents the further flow of liquid metal from ladle into cavity. It also prevents the liquid metal flowing back to the ladle from the cavity. An asbestos gasket is used as a sealant between drag and pouring tube to prevent bleeding of liquid metal and also aeration. One gasket is used for each cast wheel. Once the mold is prepared, it is subjected to 9 to 10 minutes of solidification. Solidification may be defined as allowing the metal to cool and solidify. After solidification, the cope and drag assembly is split and the cast wheel is obtained. The pouring of each wheel takes about 80 seconds. For one heat, 32 to 33 wheels can be casted. And a cope drag assembly can be used for 20 to 25 wheels. Once the metal is poured, paddy husk is added to the assembly through riser holes to prevent sudden drop in temperature of molten metal, which otherwise would produce cracks/flaws in the surface of wheels. The cope is clamped and lifted gently. Sometimes, wheel sticks to the cope, so the crane moves up and down over the drag controlled by the operator. The wheel is placed in hot wheel kiln, where it is subjected to controlled air cooling. The cycle time is 32 minutes.